In this movie and the next, we'll look at how you can add structures like loops and decisions to sequence diagrams using what are called combined fragments. We'll look at parallel structures and loops in the first movie, and then in the second movie, decisions that are the equivalent of if-then statements, and those that are the equivalent of if-then-else or case statements. Then I'll list the other types of combined fragments that we don't cover here. As you might expect, if you're modelling interactions in systems that are going to be implemented as computer programs, there are going to be places where you'll want to include the kind of structure that you get in programs, loops and if statements, for example. Combined fragments allow you to group together message sequences in interactions that represent loops, if-then statements, if-then-else statements, case statements, parallel execution of code, and a number of others. We'll start with parallel execution. The diagram here shows the two active objects jointly interacting with a lifeline called event queue, and the combined fragment, which is shown here as a frame with the keyword par in the top left, has two parts to it, known as interaction operands, each with its own interaction within it. Each of the interaction operands in the parallel combined fragment contains a loop. This is shown by the keyword loop in the top left. So this diagram represents two loops that are running in parallel, sharing the event queue lifeline. Each of the loops then contains an interaction occurrence, so the detail of the interactions is elsewhere. In a loop combined fragment, we can show the number of iterations through the loop as part of the name of the loop, and we can also show a condition in square brackets inside the interaction operand. So this loop will loop number of events times, while found is not equal to true. Let's see these two in Enterprise Architect and then come back to look at opt and alt. Here we are in Enterprise Architect, and I'm going to use the diagram for the use case Run Home Automation System that we started. We added two lifelines to this for the active objects of the classes Event Responder and Device Manager. The first thing I'll do is add a lifeline and call it Event Queue between the two other lifelines. So I'll move them apart, then I click on Lifeline in the toolbox, click on the diagram, and I'll call this Event Queue. Now I'm going to add a parallel combined fragment to the diagram. In the toolbox, I click on Fragment and then on the diagram pane. I have to choose what sort of combined fragment I want, and I'll select PAR, P-A-R, from the drop-down list. I need it to have two interaction operands. There are going to be two sequences of events happening in parallel. I'll call one events and the other devices. So I add those using the interaction operand section and the conditions. Events, save, and then devices, save. Click OK. You can see that it's added a dashed line across the combined fragment, and the two interaction operands are separated by that dashed line. I'll resize the combined fragment so that it covers all three lifelines, and I'll move the dashed line down. Now I can add a loop combined fragment in each interaction operand. I do the same as I did before, clicking on Fragment in the toolbox, and then on the diagram. This time I want the combined fragment to be a loop, and I'll set the condition to true so that it will run continuously till the system is forced to shut down. That one's going to cover Event Responder and Event Queue, and I want another for Device Manager and Event Queue. I'll just show you that you can put a loop counter into the top left with the loop keyword. I double-click on it to open that up, and I put a value in brackets in there. Click OK. You can see that the loop counter is displayed inside that pentagonal shape at the top left of the frame. We don't want that, so I'll delete it. So that these loops have some content, I'll add two new diagrams into the interaction view and reference them here as interaction occurrences. I'll go to the interaction view and I'll add two new packages called Handle Events and Manage Devices. Inside each of these, I want to add an interaction. So I can select New Element, Interaction. This one is Handle Events. I do the same for Manage Devices. Then I'll add those two diagrams as interaction occurrences into my diagram Run Home Automation System. As before, I simply drag the diagram on, make sure that I've selected interaction occurrence. I don't need to change its name. And then I resize it. and make sure that it covers the lifelines that it needs to. So we've added parallel and loop combined fragments to a diagram. We'll go back now to find out about opt and alt combined fragments in the next movie.